this one. Okay, I will rub this all this and then we will start. That's better actually. Now I will draw the structures of this. Fourth wall of the flower is known as gynoecium. Okay, I will draw the structure. First you draw one oval like structure. Here some dot, so diploid, and you can draw this like an oyster. Okay, and cover with this like that. Fine. Now you can see this middle one. From this middle one tube like structure is emerge out. Then you can draw like. Okay, what is the middle? You have to draw the half structure of it, half parallel to that. Here is also, and second is root. You have to cover the ovule. Fine. Now this one. Okay, that is called as pollen tube. Fine. And this is the pollen grain. Okay. Okay. Fine. Now there are so many pollen grains are there. This is called as okay. Now see, I will tell you what is this. This is a, now we are going to study about this portion, fourth essential word, that's called as calyx. Sorry, carpels, or it's also known as gynoecium. So gynoecium it also has three parts. That part is called as stigma. Okay, and that is long tube-like structure you can see. That's called as style. And this is called as ovary. And you can see this portion, that's called as ovule. Okay, now this is called as pollen tube. This is pollen grain. Okay, and one gamete is present, that is called as male germ cell. Okay, you can see here, that's called as female germ cell. So this is all about the structure of gynoecium, or we can say the structure of carpel. Now see, what is the first point of that? Okay, so now you got how to draw the diagram of gynoecium. So gynoecium is also the essential one. It is a essential and innermost of the word. Innermost, fourth wall of the flower. Okay, it is, as we know that it is essential walls. Androecium and gynoecium both are essential walls. Okay, so it is essential, and this one innermost. Outermost wall is known as calyx. Innermost wall is known as androecium. So it is essential innermost wall of the flower. It is the fourth wall of the flower. Okay. Now it is made up of carpels. It is made up of carpels. Okay. Now each carpels, this portion is known as carpels. Okay. Now each carpels has three parts. each carpel is made up of 3 parts. Okay, that is, first is called as ovary, that portion. Second it's called as style, this portion, and uppermost is called as stigma. Okay, this is first, second and third. Okay, so each carpels, you know that this gynoecium is made up of carpels, and each carpels is made up of 3 parts, or it has a 3 part. First part is ovary, second part is style, third part is, where is ovary? This portion you can see. Okay, middle one, that is called as ovary. This long tube like structure you can see, that's called as style, and this uppermost portion, that's called as stigma. Okay, fine. Now see what is ovary. You can see swollen portion here. This is swollen portion. The swollen portion at the base is called as ovary. So what is ovary? It is a swollen portion at the base is known as ovary. Okay, next from this ovary you can see this one. Okay, now from this ovary a tube like structures is there, that is called as style. So it is a tube like structure is present. That tube like structure is known as style. Okay, and the style which is possesses the stigma at its tip, you can see this condensed part is present at the tip of the style, that is called as stigma. So the style possesses stigma at its tip. Okay, now you got the 3 parts of this gynoecium. Okay, now you can see this is the ovary. This ovary contain ovules, that innermost portion. I will level it, I already leveled. Okay, that's called as ovule. Okay, so ovary contain ovules, and this ovules possesses a female germ cell or female gamete. So next point is that what is ovary contain? Ovule, and that ovule possesses female gamete. Fine. Okay, so what is this is over. Then how the reproduction is occurred. Okay, now you can see this male germ cells. Okay, now we see how the fertilization occurs. Okay, now the male germ cell, where the male germs is present? Male germs present in stamen part. Okay, so this male germs produced by who produce? Is produced by pollen grain, right? Pollen grain. That male germs produced by pollen grain fuse with, I will add, it means fused with, what is? It is a female gamete. Okay, and where the female gamete is present? It present in ovule of the ovary. Okay, it undergoes which process? It undergoes the process of fertilization. Okay, and gives us zygote, and which is capable of growing into a new plant. And this zygote is capable of growing into new plant. Understood? That's it's called as after production of a gametes. Okay, that is called a gametogenesis. We know that. Okay, gametogenesis. Gamete means gametes, male gametes and female. Genesis means synthesis or production. Okay, so here the female gamete is produced by ovary, right? And the male gamete is produced by pollen grain. Okay, which is present in stamen part of the third wall of the flower. Okay, so male germ cell produced by pollen grain is fused with and is this mixed with the female gamete produced in ovary. Ovules in ovary. This is the ovary. This is the female gamete, right? Ovary. They undergo which process? Fertilization. Fertilization. Okay, and they form a zygote, and that zygote is capable and responsible for growing into a new plant. Okay, so this is all about the fertilization. Thus, the pollen needs to transfer from stamen. So for this, but how this fertilization is occurring, that is very important. Okay, how this process of fertilization occurs. So you can see here the pollen grains is there, anther is there. Now this anther has two chamber, that is called as pollen sac, and pollen sac has so many numbers of pollen grains. Now this pollen grain transferred into the stigma of this gynoecium. Okay, यहाँ से pollen grain कहाँ जाते हैं? यहाँ पे. Just here I am telling, explain all the detailed diagram again. That's why. So you can see this pollen grains are there, and this is the stigma. So these pollen grains are transferred from anther to the stigma of the flower. Okay, that process is known as pollination. That process is known as pollination. Now you got it. What do you mean by pollination? The transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of the flower. This process is known as pollination. So इसी pollination के थ्रू क्या होता है? यहाँ से मेल गमेट जो पोलन ग्रेन में प्रेजेंट है वो यहाँ स्टिग्मा पे स्टिक हो जाता है. अब स्टिक होने के बाद क्या करता है? हमने देखा ये पोलन ट्यूब है. ओके, सो ये पोलन ट्यूब बनाता है. इट स्टार्ट फॉर्मिंग अ पोलन ट्यूब फ्रॉम दिस पोलन ग्रेन टू दिस egg cell to the ovule. Okay, and then they transfer this male germ cell from this pollen tube and it reaches to the egg. Okay, so here female gamete, here is male gamete. They fertilize and they form a zygote. So that process is known as fertilization. Okay, now what will happen after the fertilization? Then we study the post-fertilization events. What will happen? After fertilization, what will happen? Or post-fertilization event, or it's also known as post-fertilization event. Okay, so after fertilization क्या होता है? That's called as post-fertilization event. So here after fertilization, this zygote is formed. Now this zygote, this is a female gamete and this is a male gamete. They fuse, they form a Z. They form a zygote. This process is known as fertilization. Okay, so after fertilization क्या होता है? This zygote divides several times. Okay, it divides several times and form a embryo. अब ये embryo कहाँ होता है? Within the ovule. They form embryo within the ovule. Okay, zygote form होता है by the process of fertilization. अब now what we are going to study, after fertilization क्या होता है? This after fertilization process is known as post fertilization event. अब क्या होता है? Once the zygote is formed, the zygote start dividing again and again. It divides so many times and they form one structure that's called as embryo. अब embryo कहाँ होगा? It's formed within the ovule of this ovary. Okay, so this ovule, okay, ovule किसमें है? Ovary में. Okay, now this embryo formed within ovules of this ovary. So now these ovules develop a tough coat. Now this ovule develop tough coat, okay, and gradually converted into the seed, and this converted into the seed. Okay, it means the ovule is converted into the seed, and this ovary grows rapidly. This ovary again grows rapidly and ripen, and finally to form fruits. It means ovule form a seed of fruits and ovary form a fruits. Okay, here I mentioned this ovule form seed and this ovary form fruit. Okay, so what will happen again? I will repeat this post fertilization event. Now listen it carefully. Okay, once the zygote is formed after the process of fertilization, this zygote divides several times. Once they divide several times, they form one structure. That structure is called as embryo. Where this embryo is situated? Embryo is situated within the ovules of this ovary. So ovules and ovary. Okay, so ovules develop a very tough coat. Okay, and gradually converted into the structure that is called as seed. And ovaries grows very rapidly and ripen, यानी पक जाती है, and then they form a fruits. So ovary converted into the fruits and ovaries converted into the seed. So meanwhile, after the formation of seed and fruit, meanwhile, what the other walls are present? Petals, sepals, and stamen, style, and stigma. Right? All that. Once the seed and fruits are formed, okay. Once the seed and fruits are formed, so meanwhile, these petals, sepals, stamen, style, and stigma may stravel यानी fall off. Okay, fall off यानी गिर जाते हैं, झड़ जाते हैं, and only seed is left. Okay, and now this seed contain a future plant which contain embryo. Okay, now this seed contain a future plant on embryo and which develop into the seedling under an appropriate condition, and this process is known as germination. Okay, मैंने क्या कहा? Once the seed and fruits is formed, so meanwhile क्या होता है? All the walls of the flowers is fall down except the ovary, because ovary is the main part, right? So petals, sepals, stamen, styles, and stigma fall off. तो बचता क्या है? Only seed. Now this seed is left. Okay, seed you know, matki seed we are talking about. Matki seed हुआ, then this grains, wheat, rice. These are all our seeds. Okay. Now the seeds is left. Now the seeds contain क्या रहता है? Its seed is, how can we define the seed? Seed is nothing but a future plant. Okay. When we sow the seed inside the soil and give proper conditions, the new plants is coming from the seeds. Right? So I can say like that the seed contain a future plant. Okay. Now the seed contain a future plant which contain embryo, and this embryo develop into the seedling when under appropriate condition, and this process is known as germination process. This process is known as germination. Understood or not? Yes. Now next we will see here in plant double fertilization is occurs. How its double fertilization is occurs, we will see that one. Now I said okay, so here the post fertilization events are done. Then in plants double fertilization is occurs. Okay, we already studied the fertilization. Okay, double fertilization is occurs. How the double fertilization occurs in flowers, we will see that one. Okay, so as we know that the flower plant, in flowering plant, one sperm is there, that is called as male gamete. Definitely male gamete is nothing but the sperm, right? And this female gamete is nothing but the, yes, egg, or it's called as ova, or it's also known as ova. Okay, now this male gamete is known as sperm, female gamete is egg and ova. So in flowering plant, one sperm, so there are so many pollen grains are there, right, stick on the stigma, and so many sperms are coming from this pollen tube. Okay, so what will happen over here, let's see. So in flowering plant, one sperm, okay, is fertilizes the egg cell that is present, egg. Okay, that is called as fertilization, and they form a zygote, and the process is known as fertilization. Okay, the one sperm fuse with the egg, they form a zygote. This process is known as fertilization. Okay, what about the other sperm? There is other sperm is also present. Okay, now this other sperm fuse with two polar nuclei. Okay, here is two polar nuclei are present here. These other sperms are fused with two polar nuclei and then forming two polar nuclei, right? And they forming endosperm. They forming endosperm. Okay, that's why this is known as double fertilization. Understood why the double fertilizations occurs in flower? So see, we can see the sperm fused with egg, they form a zygote through the process of fertilization. This is the first fertilization, and where the second fertilization occurs, where it occurs, so we can call it double. So another sperm, this is another sperm fused with this two polar nuclei, and this polar nuclei is present. Okay, this two is fused with, it means plus, I will show you plus sign. So this another sperm fused with this two polar nuclei, they form a structure that is called as endosperm, and this is a second fertilization. So one and two fertilization is occurs, that's why this process is known as double fertilization. Okay, why it is called as double fertilization? Because the two fertilization event is taking place, that's why it's known as double fertilization. As we know that the how it's occurred, that I will tell you. Okay, how the double fertilization is occurs. Okay, so now you can see it's the egg is there, sperm is there. What they form? They form a zygote. Okay, now zygote divides so many times, okay, to form 7 celled, I repeat, and 8 nucleated embryo sac. Okay, they divide so many times, they form an embryo, but that embryo contains 7 cells and 8 nuclei. Okay, so I can say like that, this zygote divides, it divides to form 7 cell 8 nucleated embryo sac. Okay, out of this 7, okay, out of these 7 cells and 8 nuclei, there are 2, इनमें से क्या होता है 7 and 8 में there are 2 synergids. Okay, 2 synergids with egg cell, 3 antipodal, 3 antipodal and 2 polar nuclei are there. Okay, 5, 6, 7. Now you got it. This 2, this 5 or 6, 7. So out of these 7 cells and 8 nuclei, 2 are synergids, 3 antipolar and 2 are polar nuclei. Okay. Now these 2 polar nuclei fuse with, and this, you know that this 2 polar nuclei is formed. Now these 2 polar nuclei fuse with this other sperm and fuse with this other sperm, and they form endosperm, and that endosperms give nourishment to this zygote to grow this, and one sperm is there, and this one sperm is there that fuse with this egg cells and they form a zygote. So in this way the double fertilization occurs in flower. I think now you all getting. Okay, so I will repeat this portion. So it's little bit complicated, but it's very easy, right? As we know that egg and sperms, right, they form, egg and sperm fuse, they form a zygote. This process is known as fertilization, that we already studied. Now this zygote, once they divide so many times, they form a one structure that is called embryo. An embryo has 7 cells and 8 nucleated. Okay, out of this 8 nucleate, what is 2 are synergids, 3 are antipolar, 2 are nuclei. Now these 2 polar nuclei are attached with this other sperm and they form endosperm, and this endosperm provide nourishment or give support to the growing zygote or growing embryo. Okay, fine. You can see here. This is called as antipodal. This is 2 synergids, and this is called as 2 polar nuclei. Here the sperm is egg and they form a endosperm, and that endosperm support this zygote for their further growth. So this is all about the double fertilization. But this topic is not in. One topic is left, that is called as pollination. Now next we will see the pollination. That portion is left, and then the sexual reproduction in flowers is finished. Okay. So next topic is that's called as pollination. So what do you mean by pollination? The transfer of pollen grain. Okay, what is the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma, anther to the stigma of the flower. This process is known as pollination. Okay, as I initially told you, this is carpel, the stigma, style and ovary, and that's called as filament, and that is called as anther. Okay, in this anther 2 pollen sacs are there in the pollen grain. So this transfer, pollen grain present here, stigma is here. So this pollen grain is transferred from anther to the stigma. Okay, this transferring of pollen grain from anther to the stigma, this process is known as pollination. Okay, basically these pollinations are 2 types, that is called as self-pollination and cross-pollination. Okay, there are 2 types of pollinations are there, self-pollination and cross-pollination. What do you mean by self-pollination? Transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma, okay, but of same flower, or we can say different flower produce on the same plant, right? What do you mean by self pollination? मैंने कहा transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma is known as pollination. But pollinations have two types, either self pollination or cross pollinations. So what do you mean by self pollination? Transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of same flower. Okay. Otherwise, transfer of pollen grain to the stigma of another flower, but of the same plant. Okay. एक ही प्लांट पे ओके बहुत सारे फ्लावर्स लगते हैं, तो ट्रांसफरिंग ऑफ पोलन ग्रेन ओके उसी फ्लावर में होगा, नहीं तो दूसरे फ्लावर में होगा, पर वो दोनों फ्लावर किसी एक ही प्लांट पे होगा. ओके, दैट्स व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड एज सेल्फ पॉलिनेशन. सो व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय सेल्फ पॉलिनेशन? Here, the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of the same flower or different flower produced on the same flower, is produced on the same plant, is known as self-pollination. But what happens in cross-pollination? Here, the transfer of pollen grain from anther of flower to the stigma of another flower produced on different plant having different genetic material. Okay, it's known as cross-pollination. It means what I told you, here the anther of one flower, okay, and here the stigma of another flower produce on different plants. Okay, now see, here plant is only one, but here plants are different. Okay, so what do you mean by cross pollination? Here the anther of one flower of the one plant transfer into the pollen grain, the transfer of pollen grain from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower produced on different plant, okay, which have totally different genetic material. This type of pollination is known as cross pollination. Okay, so during this cross pollination, external agents are required. During this process of cross pollination, external agents are required. The what type of external agents are required for the cross pollination? Okay, that like it